In this video, I'm going to review every single movie and TV show I saw in 2019. At the end of 2018, I decided to write a list of every movie and show I saw for the first time in 2019 and rate them on a scale from 1 to 10 so that I could review every single one of them in a video. So throughout the year I did exactly that. In this video you'll see that most of them are from 2019, some from 2018, and others are even older than that. In this video, I have tried to do short and simple reviews of 60 plus movies and shows, spoiler free. I've spent all of December creating this video, so if you would please like and subscribe to the channel, I might do another one next year. So sit down, grab some popcorn, and enjoy me talking shit for the next hour.
Let's do this.
Okay, so the first movie I saw this year was Ralph Breaks the Internet, unfortunately. Nowhere near as good as the first one. The movie's a huge cash grab and you can tell. Where the first one was original, Ralph Breaks the Internet feels like a giant waste of time. The plot involves Ralph and Vanellope trying to make money so that they can buy a steering wheel for the arcade game she's in. A bunch of internet websites and pages make an appearance, and then Ralph is just like, okay, we need to make videos on the most popular video broadcasting website in the world. But I guess they couldn't afford to have YouTube make an appearance, so they made a fake one called BuzzTube. Don't waste your time with this, there's plenty of better animated movies, so I'm giving it a 3 out of 10. Next we've got Into the Spider-Verse. First of all, it's an absolute masterpiece, and it's only 1 year old. From the unique style of animation and art design to the already iconic score and soundtrack, it is the second best portrayal of Spider-Man, in my opinion. It's really funny when it needs to be, and has plenty of heartfelt moments for fans of the character of Spider-Man. I can watch it as many times as I want, but it's always going to be a 9 out of 10. Next we have A Star Is Born. If you haven't seen this, I highly recommend it. It's directed by and starring Bradley Cooper as an older country music singer with a drinking problem. Lady Gaga does fantastic in her first serious acting role, and her chemistry with Bradley Cooper feels so authentic and real. The film features the original song Shallow, which ended up winning Best Original Song at the Oscars. I can't stress this enough, all the actors in this movie give solid performances, it really is remarkable. I give it an 8 out of 10. If you're a fan of horror movies, you cannot miss out on Hereditary. This isn't your conventional horror film because it's not trying to be. There are no jump scares and no poorly written one-note characters. The movie is directed by Ari Aster, who also made Midsommar, which I'll talk about a little later. The score is one of the best of the decade as it establishes a sense of dread and eeriness that has never been seen before. I like to call this movie a modern day Shining. It's an instant classic where you get more out of it in a second viewing. By the way, the cinematography, imagery, and camera work gives it a unique style that sticks with you once the movie's over. I'm pretty sure this is a given, but if you're not a fan of horror movies, you're not going to like this movie. But regardless, it's a 9 out of 10. What We Do in the Shadows is a vampire mockumentary comedy directed, written, and starring Taika Waititi. It's only an hour and a half, so if you're a fan of his work, I would recommend it. But other than that, you're only going to get a couple of laughs out of it. It can be slow and boring at times, and you're better off just watching the funniest parts on YouTube. It's completely fine, so I'd give it a 5 out of 10. Next up is 8th Grade, one of my favourite films in this entire video. It had the best and most authentic depiction of a school environment, and Elsie Fisher does an excellent job portraying the introverted 8th grader. I also found it really funny, seeing the teachers try to relate to the students. But the only issue I have with the movie is something that happens in the third act that I personally didn't find very believable, and the movie's a little bit short as well. Other than that, it's a very heartfelt movie for basically everyone. 7 out of 10. Glass was directed by M. Night Shyamalan. It is a sequel to Split from 2017 and Unbreakable from 2000. The only redeeming factor of this movie is the colour palette. I think it uses colour really well. Also, James McAvoy and Samuel L. Jackson are just phenomenal. I really liked Split, I thought it was a good small little movie, but Glass is a really bad third act. The twist at the end was really dumb, and Bruce Willis is just fucking terrible. He hasn't been a competent actor in a really long time. Overall, it's either a 4 or a 5 out of 10. It's 5 out of 10 on a good day, so let's go with that. Before the final season of Game of Thrones came out, I decided to binge watch the entire show. By January, I was already up to season 3. Seasons 3 and 4 are usually regarded as the best ones, but I personally like season 4 just a little bit more. The second last episode of the season was called The Reigns of Castamere, which is one of my favourite episodes in the whole show, and objectively speaking, it is one of the best. The build up to moments like the Red Wedding are so earned and characters are really fleshed out, and I can't say an event like the Red Wedding was ever in the show again. Yes, there are still shocking moments later on, but I feel like they don't even compare. Honestly, the scenes with Tywin, Cersei and Tyrion are just so well written, like season 4 as well. I also want to mention, this season is where Daenerys' storyline starts to pick up a bit, but I still found it a little bit weak compared to the others. Overall, an unforgettable season, 8 out of 10. The Punisher Season 2. Honestly, I barely remember watching this. I thought Season 1 was pretty well done compared to some of the bad Marvel Netflix shows they were making at the time. John Bernthal was great, Georgia Wiggum was pretty good, but the villains sucked. The first couple episodes were decent, then the middle became really boring, and the ending was fine. The action scenes were really well done. There's a bar fight that really stands out in my mind, you could probably find it on YouTube. Frank Castle has like a love interest at the start of the season, and it goes absolutely nowhere, and she never shows up again. I don't know, if it was structured better and had a decent villain, it could have been something else. Oh well, all the Marvel Netflix shows got cancelled anyway. 5 out of 10. This mini-series is a political sketch comedy starring Sacha Baron Cohen. In this show, he embodies various characters basically taking the piss out of American politicians, celebrities, and just random people across America. Some sketches are funnier than others, but the one that is on screen right now just had me in hysterics. The episodes are short and I find it very rewatchable. 7 out of 10.
Oh shit, here we go again.
To start off February, we have Escape Room. Oh fuck me. The fact that they teased a sequel at the end of this movie just makes it so much worse. I don't even want to talk about this movie because I would have spent more time on it than the writers did. And it's made by Sony. No, not even worth it. 3 out of 10. Green Book won the Oscar for Best Picture. Sure, it's up for debate whether it deserved it, but it's still a really great film. Mahershala Ali won Best Supporting Actor, and he absolutely kills it. Viggo Mortensen as well. Both of them are just phenomenal. It's an obvious feel-good movie, like they even have a musical number at the end. It's a movie about racism in the American South, and it goes exactly how you would expect it to. The movie's kind of predictable in that sense. That might be my only problem with it. Doesn't do anything out of the ordinary with the time period it's set in. I do recommend this movie though, 8 out of 10. So this is a Netflix documentary called Fire, the Greatest Party That Never Happened, and my god, I'll tell you, I went into this not knowing what I was going to see. All I'm going to say is, Fire was a failed music festival for rich people. That's all I'm going to say, and I can't recommend this enough. It's a short movie as well, doesn't do anything insane in terms of camera work, cinematography or music, but the whole hook of this movie is the subject matter, and what happens is absolutely crazy. Seriously, you should watch it. 8 out of 10. And we're back to Game of Thrones. Season 4 is the best season hands down. The season encompasses all the best aspects of Game of Thrones. Death, betrayal, weddings, trials by combat, it's just got it all. Tywin, Tyrion and Cersei are all in King's Landing arguing with each other, and that's exactly what I wanted. Some episodes of mention are The Lion and the Rose, The Laws of Gods and Men, and The Mountain and the Viper. I don't need to say anything else, it's a clear 9 out of 10. So I used to think Season 5 was the worst, but we've got Season 7 and 8 to thank for that. I specifically remember the season starting with a flashback, and I thought that was really weird, because the show has never done that before. It's a weak season, but it still has some great moments. The Battle of Hardhome is the second best battle in the show, and Mother's Mercy was a great episode. The problem with this season is the storylines are so fucking boring. I hated the storylines in King's Landing and with Jamie and Bronn, and I'd much rather forget about them. But it doesn't matter, because the worst parts of this season don't even compare to 7 and 8. I give Season 5 a 6 out of 10. So Season 6 has the Battle of the Bastards, The Door, and the Winds of Winter. I specifically remember watching the whole season in like 2 days. But there are problems with it though. Arya's storyline is so fucking bad, and I'm gonna try to say this without spoilers, but let's just say that the things she learned don't come back in Season 8, when it probably should have. On the plus side, the storyline in King's Landing gets resolved in huge Game of Thrones fashion. Another great moment. I'm gonna give this season a 7 out of 10. Season 7, what a fucking disaster. So Ed Sheeran makes an appearance. That's not a spoiler, it's just a fucking bad choice. The first 2 or 3 episodes are fine, but then it starts to make zero sense. For example, Gendry manages to run like Sonic the Hedgehog all the way from the north of the Wall to Castle Black. Then they send a raven all the way to Dragonstone. Daenerys contemplates what to do, then rides the dragon all the way to the north of the Wall, just in time to save them all. By Game of Thrones logic, that would have taken at the very least 3 days, and there's so many more plot holes than that, but that was just my favourite one. The level of thought and great writing really takes a nosedive in this season, and it manages to get even worse in Season 8. The sad thing is people watched it to this point, so they basically have no choice but to go all the way. It's an objectively bad season, it's honestly a 4 or a 5 out of 10. But I'm feeling nice, so I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10.
Pizza time.
Captain Marvel was completely fine. It's set in the 90s only so they could say, "Oh wow, look at that. Remember Blockbuster? Remember how slow the internet was? That's so cool." Brie Larson has no charisma and no personality. She fights a computer in the Matrix. A cat eats the Tesseract. The only thing this movie has is Ben Mendelsohn, who had a couple comedic scenes. 5 out of 10, about as dull as Ant-Man and the Wasp. Black Mirror Bandersnatch was a choose-your-own-adventure Netflix one-off, and it had never been done to this extent. It's got pretty good actors. The guy from Dunkirk is in it, and it's got Will Poulter, who I think is really underrated. The concept was executed pretty damn well, and it's got some aspects I didn't expect in it, like how your fate has already been written, and regardless of what you do, it will never change. It's also much better with friends as opposed to by yourself, and it does a good job of breaking the fourth wall. Really solid concept. I give it an 8 out of 10. So I'm going to have a bit of a story time with this movie, and it's going to affect my review of it unfairly, but I don't care, so here we go. Before I went into the cinema, I ate some fast food from a place that shall remain nameless. So I ate the food, went in the cinema. 20 minutes later my stomach was absolutely fucked. I was fidgeting, getting lightheaded, coughing. It was not good. Straight after the movie, I basically collapsed outside the cinema. I got home and threw up 3 times, once at midnight, next at 3, and next at 5. So if you've been following up to this point, you will hopefully understand that it was the worst cinema experience I've ever had. Okay, now to talk about the actual movie. It was directed and written by Jordan Peele, and I'm gonna say it was nowhere near as good as Get Out from 2017. The first act was decent, but I really hated the second and third acts, because the scare factor was already gone by that time. It became a comedy, but like a really bad one. I was not a fan. I didn't like the ending, but I did like the soundtrack. I gotta admit, that main theme stuck with me all night. This is a bit harsh, but I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. Worst night of my life. Sex Education is a Netflix series set in the UK about a bunch of awkward school kids. The main character tries to make money by giving advice to other people who are having sex problems, and that's about all there is to it. Some problems I have with it are, all the actors look way too old to be school kids, it's not funny, and it can be really cringe at times. If you want a series about socially awkward British teens, go watch The In-Betweeners. I give this show a 4 out of 10. Fuck. Never mind what just happened. So I decided to watch Mr. Robot because I heard great things about it, and season 1 completely blew me away. Mr. Robot is about a group of hackers. It's about mental illness, it's about trauma, it's about large-scale violence, and it's about human relationships. This series is a storytelling rollercoaster in a good way. Sam Esmail, the creator and frequent writer and director, knows exactly how to tell a compelling story with characters you care about. I'm talking about the whole show, but it applies to season 1 as well. The cinematography, the score, soundtrack, and writing are all exceptional. I just want to point out that with this show, there are no bad seasons. Every season is incredible for what it brings to the show as a whole. All characters are so well written that my favourite characters change for each season. For season 1 it's Elliot, by the way. I can't say any more, so I'm going to recommend this show, and I'm going to give season 1 an 8 out of 10. Shazam! That was such a fun movie. It's a movie made for kids at the end of the day, so it doesn't take itself too seriously. I found it kind of similar to the first Spider-Man movie from 2002, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually kind of refreshing. Zachary Levi is pretty good at playing a kid in an adult man's body, and Jack Dylan Grazer, who plays Freddy, was really good. The VFX are pretty bad in this movie though. It's funny, and the villain is so fucking bad that I laughed at everything he said. Oh, and by the way, I'm kind of glad Henry Cavill didn't show up in the end. It makes it a lot funnier that he's not in it. Anyway, not a bad movie. 6 out of 10. Endgame, the highest grossing movie of all time. I don't need to say much about this movie, but I'm pretty sure everyone on Earth has seen it. Not as good as Infinity War, but it's probably the most ambitious movie in film history, and it doesn't manage to crumble to pieces. It's a competent movie, with emotional moments, characters you care about, and there's stakes in it. The Hulk is cringe and Thor plays Fortnite. It's not a spoiler if something that bad was actually put in the movie. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Maybe in a few years it'll be higher. So Eurotrip was on TV one night, and I just thought it was so fucking funny. It's my kind of humour. It came out in 2004, so some of the jokes are a bit dated. It mimics American Pie, Howard and Kumar, you know, those kind of movies. It's a product of its time, and I think it ages really well. It's actually so funny, like I was dying when I saw it for the first time. 7 out of 10. The Walking Dead Season 9. Why the fuck do I still watch this show? So Andrew Lincoln didn't want to do the show anymore, and they gave Rick Grimes a send-off this season. And that episode I thought was really well done. Other than that, the second half of this season really sucks. The new villain Alpha is played by an actress trying to do a weird southern accent, and it doesn't work at all. I'm just in the show for the endgame now. I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. I'm gonna start by saying Season 2 has one of the funniest TV episodes I've ever seen. The show isn't really a comedy, and what it does for this specific episode had me laughing out loud the whole time. It's halfway through the season. If you've seen the show, you'll know what I'm talking about. This season kind of hits the same beats as last season, but not as effectively. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just been done in Season 1. It does start off a little bit slow, not gonna lie. Season 2 gets a 7 out of 10.
Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret.
7 Days in Hell is a mockumentary of a tennis match that lasted 7 whole days. It's starring Andy Samberg and Kit Harington, and let me tell you, I found Kit Harington so hilarious in this movie. It is a really posh British accent, and he pulls it off really well. It's only 15 minutes long, but the only thing it has going for it is the 2 stars. The production quality, effects, music, and structure are all really low quality. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Detective Pikachu. I'm about to go on a rant on this piece of shit fucking movie. For fuck's sake, I was angry after I saw this. The acting is amazingly bad. I went and saw it with a huge Pokemon fan, and he was so disappointed with it. There's a Forbes article online talking about how Detective Pikachu is the greatest video game movie of all time, and I bet they did that just to piss me off, because we all know the Sonic the Hedgehog movie is going to be a contender for Best Picture. But in all seriousness, Ryan Reynolds made me rethink my existential purpose in this world. The script was written by 40-year-old boomers, and the movie would be much better if you were drunk. 2 out of 10, please, I'd like to move on. Leaving Neverland was an HBO documentary where 2 men retell how Michael Jackson sexually abused them in the 90s. Now, I found it difficult to review this documentary. I found it difficult because it's really well made, well edited by the way. The way it intertwines the interviews with the old footage and old photos was actually done really well. My problem with it is, unfortunately, I don't want to recommend this to anyone. It's really disturbing, and for someone like me who's seen tons of horror movies, I still found it really unpleasant. If you have an opinion of Michael Jackson, whether it's good or bad, It's gonna change no matter what if you end up watching this documentary. I'll give it a 5 out of 10 just because. John Wick Chapter 3. Keanu Reeves has been having a fantastic year, hasn't he? John Wick is a character that I can watch in at least 10 more movies. In each movie they keep finding a way to bring something new to the action set pieces, and in Chapter 3 it gets even more insane than the last. There's a specific action scene where dogs fight alongside Keanu and Halle Berry, and I was just in awe of what I was seeing. Honestly, the plot isn't meant to be taken too seriously. At least I don't think it is. I just go for the action and Keanu kicking ass. Really solid trilogy, 8 out of 10. Season 3 introduces two characters, Dom DePiro and Irving. Sam Esmail does an amazing job of introducing new characters into the world and making the audience like them immediately. I don't know how he does it, but he keeps finding a way to flesh out the characters even more so than before. Even Game of Thrones couldn't do that in its best seasons. Season 3 had an episode that was entirely one long continuous shot for 42 minutes. What else do I have to say? The way the season ended, it had my favourite ending and twist to a season finale I've ever seen. Season 3 gets a 9 out of 10. Game of Thrones Season 8. What do I need to say about this disaster of a season that hasn't been said already? To be fair, it does have really good set design, production, and VFX. Everything else though, erase it from my memory. Character arcs are completely butchered by writers who had no idea how to end the series. The whole storyline of the White Walkers has an unsatisfying end, and nothing makes any sense. There's tons of YouTube videos explaining all the plot holes, but to me, this whole season is a plot hole. 4 out of 10.
Oh my god, he on X Games mode.
Dark Phoenix was a colossal failure on every level. I'm glad the franchise is dead because at this point I'd rather watch Suicide Squad than this movie. The script was written by a 12-year-old and I couldn't tell you the name of the villain. Like I actually can't even find it online. That's gotta be a whole new low. This movie would also be 7,000 times better if you were drunk. 3 out of 10, not worth your time. Toy Story 4. I knew Pixar would go all out for Toy Story 4 because it's their most popular franchise and they wouldn't take shortcuts with this movie. That's why it took so long to make. Toy Story 4 was such a good time and I can tell it's going to be an instant classic and probably win Best Animated Feature at the Oscars. It's got a great message about making your own choices and the franchise shows how characters grow from movie to movie. It's 24 years old at this point and I've come to realize that this series of movies is about time. People change, and it's up to us to be there for them along the way. Maybe I'm being overly philosophical about this movie, but I don't care. This was my childhood. I do have some problems with Toy Story 4. Some characters have been pushed to the side for most of the movie to make way for newer characters. I would have liked them to spend more time with some of the original characters more. Also, I've heard people say Toy Story 4 didn't need to be made because Toy Story 3 had a satisfying ending. To those people I say, I feel lucky to have an ending that brought closure to the series, even more so than before. Really great film, 8 out of 10. Yesterday was a low-budget film about a struggling musician who wakes up one day and no one on earth knows who the Beatles are. He takes the opportunity to write all the Beatles songs and he becomes an international superstar. Firstly, I'm going to say this movie has tons of technical problems, but when you have a pretty small budget, those cracks are going to show. But for what it's worth, I really enjoyed this movie. Lily James and Kate McKinnon were really good in it. Meanwhile, the main actor was just fine. By the way, Ed Sheeran's in this movie, and he's absolutely garbage. Anyway, it's a feel-good movie, it's pretty funny, and I'd probably watch it again. 7 out of 10. Chernobyl. Chernobyl is a masterpiece. HBO released this straight after Game of Thrones so customers wouldn't cancel their subscription, and they definitely made the right call. The production design, the acting, music, the sets and the makeup is what makes this show stand out. I highly recommend you watch it if you haven't already. It's a 9 out of 10. Next we have Jessica Jones Season 3. So Season 1 I would give a 9 out of 10. Season 2 a 7 because it's not as good. And Season 3 unfortunately I'd just give it a 5 out of 10. The writing has become really sloppy and it's super boring. Meanwhile, we have Dwight Schrute as the villain, who I was laughing at most of the time. And the ending is pretty bad as well. If you're a fan of Jessica Jones, you should watch it, but otherwise, just skip this one.
It's hair, whack. It's gear, whack. It's jewelry, whack. Me, I'm tight as fuck.
Next is Spider-Man Far From Home. Look, when I first saw Far From Home, I actually considered it a top tier Spider-Man film. But after watching it more times, I started to see the cracks. Like, if I rewatched all the movies in this video again, all the numbers are gonna change. Same with this movie. I really don't think time will serve it well, and that's unfortunate because the original Spider-Man trilogy ages like a fine wine. There's a scene around the middle where Peter accidentally orders a drone strike on his classmates, and for the whole time I was thinking, why is this in the movie? And why is it so awful? There's actually a lot of questionable scenes. The scene where Peter gets hit in the head by that massive bell, the scene in the bar where Quentin Beck is revealing his plan, and literally the first part of the movie in Mexico is completely useless. But let's talk about some positives. It's got many great twists, the action sequences were well done, and I like the performances in it. But this movie is tough because I'm such a huge fan of Spider-Man, and if I wasn't, it would be a 7 or an 8. But for me, I don't find this movie very rewatchable, and it doesn't serve the character justice. Spider-Man Homecoming was better. Far From Home gets a 6 out of 10. So I went into this movie not having seen the original, and so I didn't know how my experience was going to go. And it went about the same as everyone else's. I thought this movie was pretty dull, which is ironic for the incredible photorealistic animation. That's the only positive of this movie. I thought Donald Glover and Beyonce was so especially bad. There was a scene that I thought felt out of place, and so I asked my friend during the movie, was this in the original? And he said no. So even someone like me, who'd never seen the original, could tell when a scene didn't fit in this pretentious cash grab of a lifeless source of borderline entertainment. Turn that into a song. 4 out of 10, stop with the remakes. Here's another bad horror movie to add to the list. I swear the horror genre has accumulated the most terrible movies ever. I specifically remember a part where the ghost makes its way back into the house and it wants to kidnap the little girl or something. The door opens and the girl gets absolutely yeeted. It was so fucking funny, I had to replay that scene.
Sam! Get away from that door!
Mommy, I got Misty and I didn't break the beans.
But that's all I have to say about this. 3 out of 10. Stranger Things Season 3. This show is the reason why you get Netflix. HBO had Game of Thrones, Disney Plus has The Mandalorian, and Netflix has Stranger Things. I did not expect to like Season 3 as much as I did. It is the best season. I found it similar to Game of Thrones in the way that it has interconnecting storylines. And in Seasons 1 and 2, some of them were better than others, but Season 3, I found them all so much fun. The introduction of new characters and the dynamic between people we haven't seen spend much time together was so well done. The Duffer Brothers created a small little show and it has grown so much over the years. There are a number of heartfelt moments and they hit the right beats to give characters more depth than before. By the way, I watched this whole season the night it came out and I would absolutely do it again for Season 4. 9 out of 10. I've always wanted to watch Breaking Bad. I wasn't watching any other big shows in July, so I took the opportunity to watch the series from start to finish before the end of the year. Season 1 is my second favourite season. It's only a short season, 7 episodes, and I began comparing it to the first season of The Walking Dead. It's a very contained season, not much going on compared to like Season 5. Season 1 focuses on Walter White as he starts his journey as a criminal mastermind. The best parts of this season are just Walter and Jesse interacting with each other. Their dynamic starts here and it creates memorable moments for this season and for the future of the series. 8 out of 10.
Oh, fuck. I can't believe you've done this.
Hobbs and Shaw. Garbage. I know it's not high art or anything, and it's clearly not trying to be, but for massive stunts and Simone battles, it was still garbage. Really unfunny, lacks identity. In a couple of years, I'm gonna forget that this was part of the franchise. It's a movie literally no one wanted. Please don't make a sequel. 4 out of 10. Borat. Borat was a hilarious sort of road trip movie starring Sacha Baron Cohen. Everyone knows about this movie as it's kind of become a classic at this point. Whenever he interacts with random people on the street, it makes for the most entertaining parts because he's just acting like a moron. However, the movie is only an hour and a half long. I thought the comedic scenes were pretty inconsistent most of the time. And once again, you can just find the best scenes on YouTube. So I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the 9th film from Quentin Tarantino. It follows Cliff Booth, Rick Dalton, and Sharon Tate, played by Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Margot Robbie. The movie has a slow pace as it shows the day-to-day lives of those three people in 1969 Hollywood. The acting is impeccable from all main actors and supporting. There is not a shred of doubt in my mind that if this film was filmed in 1969, it would look exactly like this. The talent behind this movie, the direction, seriously, Tarantino has so much passion for the industry, he's one of the greatest directors of all time. The overall aesthetic of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood makes me feel like this movie will be even better than it is right now, 20 years in the future. Everyone who worked on this masterpiece should look back and feel nothing but pride for creating a love letter to Hollywood and the film industry. The ending of this movie is so fucking insane. It had me shocked but laughing like crazy at the same time. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is an example of movies that just aren't made anymore. It's a 9 out of 10. Season 2 is probably the weakest season in my opinion, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't watch it again. Seriously, like Mr. Robot, Breaking Bad doesn't have any bad seasons. This season introduces Saul, definitely a fan favourite and one of my favourite characters. Bob Odenkirk is so charismatic with his performance, it makes for a new dynamic with Walter and Jesse that just wasn't in Season 1. I'll give Season 2 a 7 out of 10. Season 3 is when I believe the show starts to become larger in scale. There's nothing wrong with that. Matter of fact, it allows me to compare the earlier and later seasons on how popular the show had become at the time. This season, towards the end, creates a sense of urgency and makes you always feel like time is running out. That's something Breaking Bad is so remarkable at doing. Season 3 has a fantastic ending, and I started watching Season 4 straight after. I'll give Season 3 an 8 out of 10. "13 Reasons Why Season 3. I need to preface my review of this season by saying, I know 13 Reasons Why is really terrible. Season 1 was maybe a 7 out of 10, Season 2 was incredibly awful. But you know what? I was a real sucker for Season 3. I watched every episode as fast as I could because I was dying to know who killed Bryce Walker and the circumstances around his death. The writing is so poor, especially considering the fact that these kids are supposed to be high school students, yet they talk like they're 25. Every episode is dumb in the way that it tries to trick you into thinking that this particular person killed Bryce. But if it's episode 2, it's so obvious that it wasn't that person, so why do they even try? There's also some cliffhangers at the end of episodes, trying to convince you that this character had something to do with the murder, and it loses its effect when you watch the next episode straight away and see that, oh wait, it has literally nothing to do with it. At the end of the day, I watched Season 3 so goddamn fast, and I can't say I didn't enjoy it. 6 out of 10.
Uh-oh. Stinky.
It Chapter 2. Definitely not as good as the first one. Really long movie, and it didn't need to be. It could have been half an hour shorter. But I had so much fun watching it. The scene with the old lady in her apartment had me and my friends laughing like crazy. The movie isn't actually scary at all. It's just a build up to the jump scare that builds suspense. Once the scare has happened, you're either laughing or confused about what the hell is going on. There was a scene with all the kids from the first movie that just felt off. You can tell some of the kids were being digitally de-aged, and they were talking really fast. It felt like the editors sped up the scene by like 50%. But that's just a nitpick though. This movie has some good comedy. Bill Hader and James Ransom gave really good performances. I'll give It Chapter 2 a 6 out of 10. Good Boys was such a fun time. One of the funniest movies of the year for sure. The three main kids were perfectly cast, and just them going through the town and getting into shenanigans made for the best parts of the movie. I definitely recommend Good Boys. You're sure to get a laugh out of it. 7 out of 10. Season 4 has such smart writing, and it's a credit to Vince Gilligan, who knows exactly how the story is going to play out. There are stakes and anything can happen. This season plays into the mind games between Walter, Jesse and Gus. Gus has proven himself to be unpredictable, and seeing how Walter handles that makes for some intriguing television. Season 4 is the calm before the storm. Actually, let me rephrase that. Season 4 is the storm before the storm. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. The Boys. To be honest, I was kinda disappointed with this show. All it had to offer was grotesque violence, lots of swearing, and superheroes being assholes. The only interesting character to me was Homelander. Everyone else I found just bland. I'm gonna talk directly to the writers here for a bit. When you cast someone like Simon Pegg, a well-known actor, you need to give him more to do in the story. He actually does nothing and it's such a waste. Looking back on this series, I was on my phone for a lot of it, because I got so bored after the first episode. There's plenty of better shows out there. You might like this show, but I didn't, so it's a 4 out of 10.
Howard? No, come on, you're not an intellectual, you're a fake and a fraud.
Joker might be my favourite movie of the year. It is completely fueled and it works the way it does because of the performance by Joaquin Phoenix. I love the score so much. I'm not going to try to say the name of the composer, so here it is on screen. They also scored Chernobyl as well. The way that Todd Phillips is able to take this character, who is synonymous for doing some of the worst acts in comics and movies, and still make the audience feel sorry for them and understand their drive, makes it one of the greatest films of the year. I'm going to mention that Joker is not for everyone. It is deeply disturbing and has some elements of what would be considered controversial in 2019. But that's what makes it special. The movie has nothing to lose. It's not trying to please every single target audience like Avengers Endgame. It's purely made for fans of the Joker and fans of film. For the grim environment of Gotham City, this movie looks beautiful, and the cinematography and camera work is phenomenal. I give Joker a 9 out of 10. Between Two Ferns originally was a 5-minute comedy talk show starring Zach Galifianakis as he interviews celebrities and takes the piss out of them. These short segments would release on YouTube quite randomly, some as old as 2010. Netflix decided to make a Between Two Ferns movie where Zach and his film crew have to travel across America and film 10 different interviews. In between the interviews, which are clearly very funny, it just shows Zach either driving or arguing with the film crew or just doing random stuff, which is not as funny. So, once again, you can find the 10 interviews on YouTube and save yourself an hour and 20 minutes. 5 out of 10. Midsommar managed to be even weirder than Hereditary. Plus, it was directed by the same guy. I have some problems with this movie though. It's a mix between a horror, thriller, drama, and a cult movie. It's extremely slow and long, and at times nothing happens, especially in the second and third acts. I don't know, there's clearly talent behind this movie. The score once again is amazing. The costuming, set designs, and acting are all fantastic. Florence Pugh is having a successful year because in this movie, she is the best part. Her performance is so authentic, and to see her as she changes throughout the film, it was really well done. There are a number of disturbing scenes, but to me, it just came across as funny and weird. Do not watch this movie with your family. I'm giving Midsommar a 7 out of 10. You know what? This might be the worst movie of the year. On my notes next to Annabelle Comes Home, I wrote ha 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 and the laughing emoji. And just as I'm doing this voiceover, I remembered why I wrote that. I'm referring to a scene where a werewolf jumps on a car and tries to kill a teenage boy. Either that or just the whole movie overall. Remember The Conjuring? The Conjuring 2, and Annabelle Creation? What the fuck happened? I thought The Nun was bad, but fucking hell, this franchise needs to die. 2 out of 10. Season 5 is the best season. If Season 8 of Game of Thrones is the equivalent of X-Men Origins Wolverine, then Season 5 of Breaking Bad is the movie Logan. It is the culmination of everything that came before. It is such a satisfying and beloved season, and I can see why. The characters have been treated with so much care and attention to detail. To even think that this would not be an amazing end to Breaking Bad would be a betrayal to everyone who worked on it. It is so iconic. Dead Freight, Ozymandias, and Felina are definitely in the top 5 episodes of the series without a doubt. After comparing this to the finale of Game of Thrones, I thought to myself, wow, this is the ending. No one feels upset with how it ended, or betrayed, or thinks that this should have been done better. That is the ending, and it's been like this since 2013. I highly recommend Breaking Bad, one of the best shows ever made. Season 5 is a 9 out of 10. El Camino, on the other hand. El Camino is a Netflix movie about what happens to Jesse Pinkman after the events of Breaking Bad. Was it necessary? No. Did it bring something new to the character? No. Was it made for the money? Absolutely. There is only one scene that stands on its own, an original scene, not similar to the show and could be considered decent, and that is the Western-style shootout. Other than that, you have a movie with flashbacks, characters returning for short scenes, and nothing interesting about Jesse has been brought to the table. This movie is the equivalent of an unnecessary DLC. The flashbacks are good, yes, but if that's all there is, we don't have a movie that stands on its own. 4 out of 10. Lake Mungo was a low-budget horror film made in Australia in 2008. It's kind of like a documentary horror, and let me tell you, it scared the shit out of me. Not in the way Hereditary did, but through the use of camera work and eerie music, it made me feel terrified of what was on screen. It has a jump scare that was so well done, it really caught me off guard, and I felt like I had a heart attack. The way that the camera slowly zooms into things in the background makes you feel so creeped out and disturbed. It's very unique. Some problems though. In parts where the camera zooms into something, you can clearly see there's 2 objects in the background. But when it only zooms into one, you know the second object will come into play later. But I feel like that's just a nitpick though, and the movie's a bit short. I really like how the actors don't even feel like real actors, just a family that's been through a lot, and that makes for some great performances. Lake Mungo gets an 8 out of 10.
Hey, I just found out it's November. What the fuck happened?
Dr. Sleep is about Danny Torrance, who after the events of The Shining struggles with alcoholism and direction in life. He meets a girl named Abra, who has the same abilities as him. Together they are forced to defeat a cult, who target people with those same abilities. The positives. Ewan McGregor and the little girl were really great in it. I didn't realize until the end credits that it was directed by Mike Flanagan, who did The Haunting of Hill House, my favourite show of last year. He is starting to become one of my favourite directors, and I'm excited for The Haunting of Bly Manor and whatever he is planning next. The film mimics the vibe of The Shining as well as it can, and I like how it's not trying to be exactly like The Shining. This movie works on its own, even with the many references and callbacks to the original Shining. And that's where the negatives come in. When the movie references The Shining, in many cases it's just an exact copy. I would have liked to see some originality when it came to that, and not a shot-for-shot remake of a scene, even though it was cool to see. I feel like the director struggled to find the line of pleasing fans of The Shining book, The Shining movie, the Dr. Sleep book, and fans that wanted something original. Going into this movie I expected to see callbacks and references, so for him to do a sequel of The Shining and have absolutely no references at all would have been a missed opportunity. So I'm glad he went with this route. I'm talking a lot about this movie, damn. Dr. Sleep has some especially beautiful and heartfelt moments that make it more than just a horror movie. The actress who plays the main villain I thought was really weak, and her accent didn't fit in this movie. To end this review, Dr. Sleep is probably the best sequel that could be made for a masterpiece like The Shining. Dr. Sleep gets a 7 out of 10. Knives Out, a murder mystery film. is a whole lot better than Murder on the Orient Express. Knives Out was a blast. I was completely enthralled by the cast and how they work so well together. Daniel Craig does an insane southern accent that I didn't expect at all, and it works so well for his character. But the star of the show is Ana de Armas, who is honestly the best part. If you want a great murder mystery film, you should definitely watch it. 8 out of 10.
Ah, that's hot. That's hot.
Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. I can already see that this movie is really divisive, and every person I've talked to has a different opinion about it. But this is what my experience was like. I went into this movie not expecting much, but you know what? I found it really enjoyable and satisfying. I know a lot of you will disagree with me, and some might agree, but that's completely fine. The task that J.J. Abrams had would not have been easy. Imagine if Avengers Endgame had to be written and directed by people other than the Russo brothers. It would have been a train wreck. So I'm gonna give credit to J.J. Abrams for doing the best he could with what he was given. The Rise of Skywalker had a bunch of satisfying moments and fan service scattered throughout the film, which I thought was really well timed and purposeful. The problems with this movie are the fact that a lot of things don't make sense, and it's really stupid at times. But you know what? I'm willing to look past that because at the end of the day, I'm glad that this film wasn't an abomination. I'm gonna give The Rise of Skywalker a 7 out of 10. Who knows, in 10 more years, people might grow to hate this or love it even more. And here we are, the last one of the video. Mr. Robot Season 4. What a great way to end 2019. This season is so brilliant in every way. And to think, this series started off as a show about a group of hackers trying to change the world. In this season, I especially love how Sam Esmail evolved the story into something more than we ever thought. I can assure you no one could predict how the series was going to end, and to see every character have just the right amount of screen time in this season was so well crafted and beautifully written. If you've watched the show up to this point, Season 4 will make you laugh, it will make you cry, and it will blow your mind. I don't want to say much about the plot of this season because it will ruin it, but I will say this: Rami Malek, Christian Slater, B.D. Wong, and especially Carly Chaikin were exceptional, and they deserve to win awards for their performances. What I say about this season won't compare to the emotion and brilliance of the show, so do me a favour and just go watch it. Season 4 gets a 9 out of 10. Well, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you disagree with some of my reviews, let me know in the comments so I can tell you why Detective Pikachu should be played at the gates of hell. I'd like to give a special thanks to cmori123 for designing the thumbnail. I will have a link to her Wattpad novel in the description. You should definitely check it out. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. See you in a bit.